Hello and welcome to my new video, Hands-on for Lean Overhead. My name is Neil Schumacher and I'm a big fan of lean administration, lean thinking, lean office, lean production and everything else that has to do with lean process thinking. Today I would like to talk to you about my new tool. It's a tool that helps you guide you through the process of doing process innovation on lean principles. So for everybody who is interested in that subject but hadn't yet had the chance to pick up a lot of experience on the subject, this could be a good starter. The video itself here is just an intro, so just a question, it covers just a question of how to get started on the subject and gives you a brief outlook on the tool itself. If you are interested in the tool itself, you can download it from my LinkedIn homepage, and there will be another 7 tutorial videos on how to handle the tool itself and how to install it, how to set it up, and how to get your organization moving on it. So let's get started on the subject. And we will start with the recap of a video that I did a couple of months ago, and that deals with the golden rule. I will explain that later on. Basically, it's the question we were dealing with: why utilization effects alone will not work to improve your cost situation in overhead or in SG&As. Once we have discussed about that and understood what the motivation for process innovation really is, we will turn to how to look for improvement potentials and how to identify them, and then turn to the tool itself, give you a little overlook on the tool and its features and how that helps you to develop new processes that are hopefully leaner and better and bring down your costs. So the golden rule, why utilization effects are not sustainable. Looking into my experience from a couple of companies, this golden rule under this name has been very persistent among leaders and planners in different organizations, at least in Germany. And the idea of the 50% golden rule is to grow your sales basically with the existing capacity or with only a little increase of capacity, especially in overhead, and thus leverage EBIT. So mostly what the approach, the easy approach is to say we will grow our overhead costs only at 50% the speed we grow sales. Now, how will that actually work in reality? I have a numerical example for you. So if you increase your sales by 10%, your personal cost growth budget is about 5%. Now, we all know that every year we have to pay salary increases. For the industrialized countries in the last couple of years, that was rather thumpy at about 3 to 4%. And that is money that goes through the door without increasing any capacity whatsoever. Another 0.5% to 1% is the full year effect for the people you hired mid last year, because this year you will have to pay them the full year of salary. That leaves about 1% for new projects and new capacity increase. Now, when we look at a 10% sales growth for most of our industries, that doesn't just fall out of the blue sky. We have to work for that quite hard. We have to come up with new products. We have to increase our global presence. We have to have market share gaining projects. We have to invest into digitalization and into new segments. Most likely there is a lot more, but just for an example, all of these different activities, of course, increase complexity and put a burden on the overhead costs and the overhead capacity. So it's for you to decide whether 1% capacity increase is enough to cover all of these issues and achieve really growth of 10%. Not once a year, but every year. Now it's impressive to understand what happens really on the long run. And what we can see is that at first, we can actually increase our sales without adding costs. And that brings down our cost per unit of sales, the so-called utilization effects. And this is what a lot of managers count on to improve their overhead rates. And this, for some time, will hold and will come true until we reach the capacity limit. And this is the point where the overhead organization cannot handle more complexity, cannot handle more activities, and not perform more services, and needs to be stocked up. And that, of course, increases costs quite significantly. Maybe you have to invest into new people, maybe you have to invest into new system, and you have step costs in your business. Now, as you can see, you return to the point in terms of cost per unit of sales, or in percentage of sales, where you were actually be coming from. And on the long run, you're just fluctuating between a situation of full utilization and partial utilization. This is not the target, clearly spoken. So what do we actually want? We want our costs to go down in percentage of sales. And to do that, you need to have process improvements. You have to get your processes leaner, because that will stretch the time between the different capacity increases. So you will be able to handle more activities to support growth before you have to invest into new systems or new people. How do I know what to improve and what to look for? Well, if we look into the literature, at least the ones that I like to work with or that I recommend, we will have to concentrate on two things. The first is the focus on flow efficiency. So instead of focusing on utilization and stuffing the organization that is existent with work, whether it's useful or not, is not recommended. Whereas for flexibility reasons is more recommended to unburden your organization in order to have them available when really demand is there. Second, and that is the more hands-on approach of the Lean Administration 1 and 2 books by Bodo Wiegand. They give you a nice approach in chapters of really what to do and what to look at and how to process or how to organize the process of coming from the old structure to a new structure. And on the basis of these two books, I got a lot of ideas for the tool itself. And both books, all three books, are really good for getting started into the subject. They're easy to read, they're nicely illustrated, and especially the This is Lean book is something that can easily be read by all organization members, and it is truly inspiring. So as said before, we have to create flow efficiency, so to say, unburden the organization and concentrate on being available when it's needed. And that is partly done by looking for waste. Now, what is waste? Waste can have different phases. One is overproduction, so you're making reports that nobody reads. That is intuitive. High stocks, that means you have too many processes at the same time and get interrupted all the time. We have waiting times when processes are not synchronized well, and people do not have the transparency in shared processes what the other participants are doing. You have unnecessary transports. That means you're doing things that are not value adding. You're hacking in manually data from one system to the next, or the alike. And you have quality issues. So you have an unstable process that tends to produce random results. I think we controllers all know or have a good idea on what that could be. So Excel files with a lot of mistakes, flat files that have errors, and so on and so forth. And last but not least, inefficient use of your capacity. So when you take the expensive guy to do the copying job, this is not efficient. What these waste types all have in common is they produce secondary needs. So when you have lengthy processes and you have a lot of waiting times, you will have people call you a lot of times asking you what the results are. And this is a secondary need or a secondary process that covers up the primary process that does not work properly, and that produces further capacity bottlenecks. So it's important to look for these waste types. And now that you have a first idea what to look for, it's not exhaustive and it needs maybe a little bit more reading on the subject, but the question now is, how does the tool help you to get started on this challenge of reorganizing your processes? So let's have a look. Process redesign is always teamwork among interface partners. You cannot do that alone because we are in a complex world that has a lot of interfaces, and you need people to participate, to see themselves in the process, and to add and to contribute with their knowledge to setting up good processes. And the tool provides a structure and a standard for alignment that you don't need to look for anymore yourself, and therefore this will speed up your process of alignment. Second, experience among project members in the beginning. So when your company is not used to continuous improvement measures that are going on constantly, or is just starting with it, the experience is rather low, and the tool is easy to operate and provides you with a guidance, and that guidance helps you create results more quickly, and that stimulates, of course, the motivation, which is in the beginning rather low. Organizations have the tendencies to stay in their processes because it is less risk for them. They know exactly what they're doing, and instead of going for the next level, they're rather fine with their inefficiencies as they are. Often this is the case, what I saw, so there is a little bit of skepticism, and you need to overcome that friction, and the tool provides a lean follow-up, and the follow-up is important to do, not to let progress sleep in. And at the same time, it gives you a structure that keeps the reporting burden low on your organization, and that helps people to accept the process parallel to their daily work, which is already demanding a lot of time, of course. Once the measure plan is decided, new processes are already documented in the tool automatically. This is also a challenge for many organizations. We have the processes in our heads, but we never have them somewhere on paper, so that when new colleagues are coming in, they can actually look it up in some documentation. And that leaves you as an organization leader with a lot of people that cannot be replaced, because if you replace them, if they're leaving the company, you're dropping into the hole of losing all that intelligence and losing all that know-how on the process itself. So very difficult and dangerous situation, and nobody really wants to do the documentation. So if you use the tool and you're going through the process of it, then with the new process installed, you will already have everything documented, and that is a nice feature. Last but not least, the tool is scalable. So if you have small projects, steps can be omitted, and that lets you progress a little bit speedier. But also, if you say, I want to have more extensive controls, I want to have new features that suit my company, the tool can easily be customized, as it uses free of charge technology like Excel and Power Query, and these qualifications are usually available in controlling departments. So you don't need external services, you don't need to spend a lot of money to get started on Lean. How is the tool set up, or the process set up in the tool? Well, it's a 6-step approach. First of all, you need to get transparency on the processes as they are at the moment. And this is something that is provided for within the tool. You're making a list of the different sub-processes of, let's say, your month-end closing process. And the tool will automatically make you these little activity boxes that you see here. You put them into swim lanes, that's a manual process, and you connect them with one another. With the table, you introduce here on the different steps, you introduce also the capacities and the duration of the sub-processes, and that gives you the possibility to actually identify where you are losing time and where you are maybe already on a good path. So second is you need to identify the potentials, of course. As said before, look for bottlenecks, look for waste. And usually when you're getting together with your team and when you work on the common understanding of the process, you will already have lots and lots of ideas from your team where problems occur and where potentials could be. These potentials get a little number and a little star, or what in Lean is called a Kaizen flash, and will give you indicators on where to look for potential. Once you have these potentials, of course, your team will have to develop measures or suggest measures. And what I learned from my experience in such in such projects is that you get an astonishing high amount of measure suggestions, and you will not be able, with your organization and the limited time capacities you have, to put them all into reality. So you have to have a concept of selecting the right ones that will advance your process as well. And that evaluation model is built into the tool already. So there are a couple of different processes that can be run. It could be the NPV calculation, where you say, okay, how much do I have to put into changing the process and how much will I get out of it in terms of time or in terms of money. There's also a calculation on the saving on the process time of the overall process you're looking at. There's also a break-even calculation, so different approaches on how to select the right suggested measures and to define a measure plan. Once this measure plan has been set up, you would have to, of course, delegate the different measures to a measure responsible, set up a timetable with different implementation levels, and agree on a budget plan. Usually for the overhead processes, not so much budget is needed, but it could easily be that you have an IT project integrated in the overall process improvement, and then of course you need to have some budget. In a nutshell, it is important to track your implementation progress, and this has to be done with a concept, and setting up the concept yourself will take another time, and getting up or coming around with a consolidation logic that puts it all together and gives you, as a project leader or a project manager, a nice overview where you're approaching on track and where your budget is on track and where not, is somewhat of a hassle if you have to do it manually. So this is provided for. All you have to do is click one button and you have the full reporting. The same applies for the measure attractiveness reporting. So once your measures have been implemented and they are effective, you need to see how your KPIs improve. Let's imagine you're redesigning your month-end closing process, and just until now you had 10 days, 10 working days for that process, and you want to cut it down to 5. You would have to go every month into the evaluation and see whether the number of days needed for the month-end closes is coming down. And therefore you develop a benchmark, a target, so to say, or a plan how many days you would need for the next months to come, and then you track. And that gives you a good idea whether your measures are effective or not. And it is also a good feedback for your team to see that they have really made a difference and that they have really advanced the subject and solved the problem. So all of that is integrated in the tool. How it is done technologically wise, we will go into a deep dive later on with the other tutorials. However, a short outlook, the whole planning and analysis part of the job is done in Power Query. If you're using the standard tool as is, there is no need to worry, it all works, it's all optimized, and you will have the tutorials to lead you through. So you do your process analysis, and it guides you up to the measure plan. Once you have the measure plan, every measure responsible has a little flat file with their dates, with their reporting duties, with a description, with a budget, and this is updated depending on whatever you agree upon for reporting reasons. And it also includes the follow-up on the effectiveness in form of a measure KPI. Now, when you have several measures and you want to have a good overview of the entire situation, you have to somehow consolidate that, and that is also done with Power Query. So a consolidated measure report over all measures and their status and their effectiveness is also available in the planning and follow-up system. So far so good. I hope that teaser helped you understand what we'll be doing in the next couple of tutorials, and I will put the tool online and give you some insight on how to operate it. I would be happy if you downloaded it and give me some feedback on how it performed and what maybe your improvement suggestions are. I'm happy to share that with you. So good luck, and thank you very much for your attention.